Who was the Dutch Cape Colony's longest-serving governor? A man in office for 21 years, who faced raging shipwrecks, devastating earthquakes, and deadly smallpox outbreaks, yet was affectionately nicknamed Father by those he led. He introduced strict new laws, organised fire brigades and policing, welcomed scientists and explorers, and oversaw the largest inland expedition in 7 decades. A town was even named in his honour. That man was Rijk Tulbagh. Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, please join the journey, and remember to like and share. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. If you're South African, were you taught about Cape Colony governors at school? Would you like more videos on this subject? Rijk Tulbagh was born in the Netherlands to Dirk Tulbagh and Catharina Catterpoel, who moved the family to Bergen op Zoom when he was still an infant. He attended the Latin school there, showing early promise. At just 16, he enlisted with the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, and in 1716 sailed to South Africa as a cadet on the Aish ter Horst. Not yet 17 when he arrived, Tulbagh quickly impressed his superiors with his diligence, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to duty. His work ethic and sharp mind showed in every task, no matter how small. Colonel de Chavannes, then governor, praised his meticulous handwriting, clear accounting, and eagerness to learn, qualities that laid the foundation for a remarkable career. Known for honesty, generosity, and quiet charity, Tulbagh was beloved by his colleagues and citizens alike. Much of his early salary quietly went home to support his widowed mother. His rise through the VOC was steady and well earned. By 1718, he was assistant clerk in the office of the Secretary of the Council of Policy. Over the next 2 decades, he became chief clerk, bookkeeper, secretary, junior merchant, and merchant, earning widespread respect. In 1739, he became secunda, the colony's second highest post, and president of the High Court of Justice. Alongside his professional ascent, Tulbagh married Elisabeth Zwellen-Griebel, sister of Governor Hendrik Zwellen-Griebel, in 1725. She passed away in 1753, leaving a legacy of shared influence and service. In February 1751, Tulbagh reached the pinnacle of his career, being appointed governor of the Cape Colony, a role he would hold with distinction for 21 years. Tulbagh is perhaps best remembered for his strict sumptuary laws introduced in 1755 to curb extravagance and enforce social hierarchy. Adapted from regulations in India, these laws reflected a concern that Europeans in the colony were sinking into luxury and effeminacy. Children and grandchildren of hard-working pioneers were said to be content only if they could ride in carriages and be waited upon by servants. The VOC saw this as a moral threat that could lead to ruin. The laws Tulbagh enforced were exacting. Only the governor could decorate a carriage with the colonial coat of arms, and only he and the council could dress their coachmen in livery. Lower officials and their wives were forbidden from carrying umbrellas, a major status symbol, while women were banned from lining dresses with silk or velvet. Gowns with trains or ornamental frippery at funerals were also prohibited. Tulbagh supported these laws not merely because he was instructed to enforce them, but because he believed they could help shape a simple, honest and resilient population, preserving the hardy virtues that had made the Dutch a powerful nation. While luxury could not be completely suppressed, the laws reflect Tulbagh's vision of social order and moral discipline in the young colony. He also oversaw the codification of the colony's slave regulations, known as the Tulbagh Code of 1754. At that time, slaves outnumbered Europeans in the Cape, many brought from Batavia, India, Madagascar and the East African coast. The code gathered and formalized existing laws, aiming to maintain order while reflecting the attitudes of the era. Punishments could be harsh. Slaves who struck a master faced death, and minor offences could lead to flogging without trial. Even funeral processions and church attendance were strictly regulated. At the same time, the code granted slaves some agency. They could learn trades, earn money, and buy their freedom. Freed blacks, known as Frei Swartes, were recognised legally in certain ways equal to white settlers. Though severe by modern standards, Tulbagh's reforms brought structure and predictability to a society where slavery was widespread and often arbitrary. Extraordinary events like the 1766 uprising aboard the Mirmin, where Malagasy captives temporarily seized control of the ship, highlight the tension and human cost of the system he inherited. See my video on the lost slaves of South Africa for more on this. The link is in the description. But Tulbagh's leadership extended beyond laws and social regulation. He took a hands-on approach to practical governance, introducing organised road maintenance to keep transport and trade flowing across the country's rugged terrain. He also established early firefighting services, recognising the danger that uncontrolled fires posed to homes, farms and towns. He knew that a thriving colony required public safety, so he established a police force to maintain order and protect citizens. These weren't just formalities. They addressed the everyday realities of life in a growing settlement, from minor disputes to serious emergencies. Under his leadership, the Cape Colony underwent major urban development. Table Valley, now Cape Town, was significantly expanded. New streets were laid out, the parade ground levelled and bordered with an oak hedge, and the town's fountains were renewed. The townhouse, still standing today, was built by the Burgher Council, while the church tower was raised a few feet and fitted with a clock. A new cemetery opened along the bay, replacing the old churchyard, and fortifications were repaired, including a new battery near the mouth of the Salt River. At Simonstown, Tulbagh oversaw the construction of a new hospital, completed in 1765, along with substantial storehouses, a stone pier, a slaughterhouse, a bakery, and workshops for smiths and carpenters. The old garrison building was repurposed entirely as quarters for soldiers and workmen. Stellenbosch also benefited from his attention. The town was enlarged and beautified, and after a fire destroyed the Drosti buildings in 1762, they were rebuilt in more elegant style. Following flood damage in 1768, the river's course was altered under the supervision of Martin Melk to prevent future disasters. Even smaller settlements like Swellendam saw practical improvements, including a pontoon on the Breda River to facilitate travel and trade. Through these projects, Tulbagh combined practical governance with a vision for orderly, attractive and functional towns, leaving a lasting imprint on the colony's urban landscape. He also faced one of the colony's deadliest challenges, smallpox epidemics. After 42 years without the disease, it reappeared in 1755, brought by a fleet returning from Ceylon, present-day Sri Lanka. At first mistaken for a fever, its deadly nature quickly became clear. In Table Valley alone, the outbreak claimed 489 European lives, 33 free blacks, and 580 slaves in just 1 month. Had the disease continued unchecked, the settlement might have been wiped out entirely. The governor acted decisively. He oversaw the creation of 2 large hospitals, one for poor Europeans and another for blacks and enslaved people, funded by their owners. Those who recovered were employed as nurses to help care for others. By limiting public gatherings, excusing militia drills, and restricting travel to the Cape, he slowed the spread, especially in rural areas, showing both pragmatism and compassion in the face of one of the colony's greatest crises. And this wasn't the end of the natural disasters. During his tenure, the Cape Colony endured 5 severe droughts, bringing challenges from cattle starvation to poor harvests. Again, Tulbagh met these crises with foresight and prudence. He carefully managed exports, stockpiling grain and importing rice when needed, so the colony could continue sending wheat, wine and other produce abroad. He also encouraged the development of new export products, such as aloe, horses and wine, strengthening the colony's economic resilience and diversifying its sources of income, which helped buffer the effects of drought. In July 1766, the Cape Peninsula experienced a minor earthquake, while most of the colony escaped damage. At Simonstown, the tremor was strong enough to send hospital bedsteads crashing against the walls. Tulbagh's administration responded calmly and efficiently, inspecting buildings and ensuring the affected areas received attention, a clear demonstration of his steady hand. During his governorship, several shipwrecks struck the southern African coast, and his administration acted promptly to assist survivors and salvage cargo. One of the most famous was the wreck of the English East India Company's ship Doddington on the 17th of July 1755. Of the 270 people on board, only 23 survived. Tulbagh's administration investigated the wreck through local hunters and lanterosts, showing a proactive and organised approach to maritime emergencies. He was not only a skilled administrator, but also a man of intellectual curiosity and cultural refinement. In 1761, he founded the Cape's first library to house the extensive book collection donated by Joachim Nicolaus von Dessen, secretary of the Orphan Chamber. Fluent in Latin and French, Tulbagh eagerly welcomed visiting scholars and scientists, fostering a vibrant culture of learning in the colony. In April 1751, the celebrated French astronomer Nicolas Louis de Lacaille arrived at the Cape, intent on charting the southern skies and measuring an arc of the meridian. Armed with a recommendation from the Prince of Orange, he received every possible assistance from Tulbagh. Despite working mostly with untrained local assistants, Lacaille carried out remarkably precise astronomical work, measuring a baseline from Cape Town to Klipfontein in Piketberg, and calculating the degree of latitude with astonishing accuracy. His measurements were so precise that, a century later, Cape astronomer Sir Thomas McClure confirmed they were only slightly off, by less than 20 miles, for the circumference of the Earth. Tulbagh's interest in natural history was equally remarkable. He corresponded with leading botanists, including Carl Linnaeus, sending him over 200 specimens of local plants. In recognition, Linnaeus named the genus Tulbachia after the governor. Tulbagh also hosted other notable visitors, such as the astronomers Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, the French writer Bernardin de Saint-Pierre, Sir Robert Clive and Captain James Cook. He earned a reputation as a benevolent and intellectually engaged host who fostered learning and discovery. On the 8th of April 1752, under Tulbagh's administration, European settlers at the Cape marked the centenary of the VOC's presence in South Africa. The day was observed as one of thanksgiving to Almighty God. Special services were held across Cape Town, Stellenbosch, Drakensberg, Roodersand and Swartland, uniting the settler communities in celebration and reflection. What of exploration? In 1752, Governor Tulbagh oversaw the Cape Colony's largest expedition since Simon van der Stel's journey in 1685. Ensign August Friedrich Beutler led the party, which included 37 soldiers, 25 wagon drivers, a superintendent, a botanist, a blacksmith, a wagon maker, a clerk, a marine officer, a surveyor and a surgeon, along with 11 wagons and a boat for crossing rivers. Their mission was to explore the country's eastern territories, report changes since 1688, and establish relations with local tribes. The expedition ventured through the Horitz River, Moselle Bay, Montague Pass and Canalant, facing lions, rugged terrain and hostile conditions. They crossed rivers including the Hamtuis, Sunday, Bushman and Fish, meeting Hottentot and Gonaqua communities and presenting gifts to chiefs like Palo and Banca. Along the way, they documented agriculture, local customs and place names, marking beacons of VOC possession at strategic points. After months of challenging travel through Tembu and Kosa lands along the Kora River, facing severe droughts and scarce supplies, Beuitler's expedition returned to the Cape in November 1752, having spent over 8 months in the field. This expedition greatly expanded the colony's geographic knowledge, reinforced VOC territorial claims, and deepened understanding of indigenous communities. Later, Captain Hendrik Hopp conducted further exploration north of the Orange River to assess inland cattle settlements. By 1770, Tulbagh had officially declared the Hamtuis River the eastern boundary of Swellendam, and the Swartberg Mountains the northern limit, even though the colony lacked the means to defend these borders. According to 19th century historian George McCall Thiel, Tulbagh was widely regarded as accessible and approachable, earning the respect and affection of the Cape's colonists. People from all walks of life could present grievances to him and expect a patient hearing. When complaints were justified, he acted promptly. When not, he offered sound counsel, showing that he saw himself not merely as a ruler, but as an advisor and friend to the people. Hence his nickname, Father Tulbagh. This integrity stood out in an era when many officials supplemented modest salaries through questionable means. He refused to engage in private trade and strictly regulated the fees officers could legally collect. By living well within his means and using any surplus to help others, he set a personal example of honesty, fairness and restraint. Under his administration, corruption and petty extortion, common in earlier years, were firmly stamped out. Farmers no longer had to pay bribes to access produce or accounts. The colony's churches were consistently well supplied with clergy. Early in his governorship, some districts were understaffed, but successive arrivals from Europe filled the vacancies. Tulbagh carefully oversaw postings, resolved disputes, and ensured stability and continuity. By the end of his administration, congregations throughout the colony were reliably served. In his later years, Tulbagh suffered repeated illnesses, including a serious attack in 1766 and a final painful bout of gout in 1771. After 11 weeks of declining health, he died peacefully on the 11th of August 1771 at the age of 72. Widowed since 1753 and without children, he left his property to his younger brother, Johannes Tulbagh, and freed his slaves. As governor of the Cape, Rijk Tulbagh displayed vision, integrity and steadfast leadership. Under his guidance, epidemics, droughts, shipwrecks and other trials were weathered with remarkable resilience. He strengthened religious life, promoted trade, welcomed distinguished visitors, and upheld strict probity, earning the lasting respect of both colonists and foreigners. Today, the Western Cape town of Tulbagh stands as a living tribute to a leader whose long and eventful tenure helped shape an entire colony.